back here on the Cover 3 podcast. So a couple of weeks ago, we discussed Matt Rule making the announcement that they would not be doing a traditional spring game. And he was very much taking the conversation towards tampering, towards the transfer portal, as though having a spring game with traditional competition, intra-squad scrimmage, especially on television, would create opportunities for other teams to see what Nebraska had and try to poach his roster. He cited that after last year's spring game, a lot of players were getting contact from other teams who were trying to seek their services and get them away from Lincoln. So that's kind of where he took this. But now we've got Texas, Steve Sarkisian, announcing they will not be doing a spring game. It really sort of favoring what he is describing as an NFL OTAs style approach to the offseason. USC will not be doing a spring game. And all of a sudden we're starting to add this up. And these are a lot of the, premier programs in college football. Danny, like, big deal, little deal? Like, what do you make of what is now a trend across the board of, sort of taking away your classic intra-squad spring game?
Big deal, because I think spring games are something that we all kind of, since we've been watching the sport, have kind of become part of the season, part of the sports season. Like, we love it. I know from a player's perspective, it was big for me because with the development, getting reps where I was actually live and could get tackled, and evaluating players that didn't get a chance to play, thought it was huge. I know our fans loved coming there. They might go to a baseball game while it's like a spring weekend. It's fun. But as we've seen this thing devolve into, glorified practices, to even more so where it's, what Ole Miss did, which was like a fanfare when you had, hot dog eating contest, dunk contest, and a 7-on-7 game. It is a shell of what it used to look like. I think that is the trend that we're headed down to, where I think the spring games themselves, as we've traditionally known it, are going to be extinct. I don't think they're going to be spring games anymore as we've known it 10 years ago.
I won't miss them. I've never been a big spring game guy. Like, I don't watch them. I don't like, when we talked about the thing with Matt Rule a few weeks ago, my point then, and it's no different now, my only concern is that you typically would see during the spring practices, like, local beat reporters would get decent access to what was going on, and then be able to share that information of, like, position battles, depth, like that kind of stuff. And some coaching staffs are always very secretive over that stuff. Like, they're never going to give you, but there would be more access, which would then provide better information. My concern, if they go to the NFL style OTAs, will be how you then handle that kind of access, media wise, coverage wise, not as some great kind of, ethical, we need transparency and people to just for fans, because I think for fans that information is important. Like, I don't think the game matters as much to fans as much as knowing what's going on with their football team does.
Seeing player, like, it makes fans happy to get in there and see the players who are going to be the stars catching touchdowns.
So
think about Texas. Think about the last 2 years of Arch Manning. The first year was a little bit of a disaster. It's like, oh my gosh, is he going to be a bust? But then Quinn Ewers played pretty well. Then this next one, he comes out, lights it up. Everybody's excited about the future. Like, those are the types of games that get people jacked up. And when you have 50,000 people that are willing to go watch those, they are meaningful. That's why I do think, and Matt Rule alluded to this as well, he's like, we'll figure out something to do with the fans. I do think they'll do some sort of fan fest like we've seen, 7-on-7, maybe something like that. It's just not going to look anywhere near what it has. And it hasn't, though. I mean, they haven't looked the same as they once were, where they were kind of true games that you played, orange, blue, garnet, and gold, whatever it was called. They were kind of true games. You put 15 minutes up and played 4 quarters. It was like, all right, let's go. Let's play. Now it's 15 periods of practice, that people can watch.
There is an argument that I don't know if it's these voices are being tended to or being listened to or catered to, I guess. But there are fans of all these college football teams that really can't afford season tickets, and who might be looking at the cost of taking their whole family to the stadium, even for a Saturday in October. And that's going to be a little bit much. And there have been a lot of fans who their first experience with the college football team was when their parents took them to the spring game, and it was like, even though they didn't know that it was a fake game, they were in the stadium. It looked like a game. It smelled like a game. The marching band was there, and it gave that impression. It flipped a new generation of fans into really caring about their what would be their favorite university. And so that aspect of it, where the spring game is usually free or extremely cheap, right? I mean, what's it like?
Mhm.
$5 sometimes, if anything. The fact that you are going to be essentially taking that off the table for fans who wouldn't otherwise necessarily be able to make it into a home game in the fall, I think that's a little bit disappointing. But I don't know if that's at the top of any of the concerns when they're weighing the pros and cons of whether a spring game should be there.
It never matters. It's fans matter probably the least. Players then are the second least. Then it's coaches.
Yeah.
Then it's coaches. Then it's athletic directors. Then it's money. Like these are all decisions made about money.
Yeah.
And but I will say from Sark, and I know he said this, they played 16 games this year. Like, do they really want to have another full, game? Yeah, no. So
I also wonder too, like the next step for me to this is if they kind of just completely get rid of spring games and they go to OTA style stuff. As bowls become less and less impactful, important, the ratings are still fine, so they're not going away anytime soon. But I wonder if we'll see changes to the policy of if you have to make a bowl game to get those extra practices in the winter. I wonder if they're just going to get rid of all that in general, and that way it'll be more of the OTA style, so everybody's on a quote unquote equal playing field.
Huh?
have you guys ever seen? This is what they need to replace.
Go ahead.
I got incredibly distracted. This is what they need to replace spring games with, because it is a time for reunions, and you see they always invite former players back.
Say
Do the
alumni.
old timers game. Was it Ole Miss? Was it Ole Miss where they had like 40-year-old dudes out there in pads, like at a spring game, like, and they actually tackled? Like, that's what you need to do is get the old players. I'll go suit up. Let's go. We'll give the fans something to root for.
Danny, we are trying to get your back right. We're trying to get you to be able to comfortably sit for multiple hours of CBS Sports Network at Big Ten Media Days in Las Vegas. We can't have you taking a blindside hit from somebody trying to squash an old beef from back in the day. Come on.